33 units signed in his first 4 months, and he signed 12 of those in his first 30 days, not to mention made $11,000 in month one of being an Airbnb host. We've got Hailame Kinikini here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Hey, welcome in everyone to the Fearless Investor Podcast and YouTube channel. I am so excited to have one of our own six-figure formula students, Hailame Kinikini, on the show today. And we went live in the Facebook group. So if you hear us talking and sharing questions from students, that's where you're going to be hearing them from. And if you're not a member of that group already, Airbnb Masterminds, you definitely got to jump into that. We're going live about once a week with guests just like Hailame. And I mean, this guy has just been a complete inspiration, no shock to me based on what I knew about him, having a sales background and having a little bit of some experience in Airbnb before. I knew he'd move fast, but 33 units and now 16 weeks of being in our six-figure formula, it's just mind-blowing. And so you're going to hear a lot of his success. You're going to hear a lot of inspiration. If you are one of those people right now that's saying, I want to get into Airbnb or short-term rentals, and I just don't know the answers to questions, I don't know the next steps, this is your opportunity to be able to have someone like myself in your corner and all of our coaches. Hailame is actually one of our coaches now because of the quick success that he's had. And all you need to do, if you're watching this right now on YouTube or listening on the podcast, you're just going to email me. That's all you got to do. info@fearlesskyle.com. info@fearlesskyle.com. Make sure the subject says 6FF, which stands for six-figure formula. And just say that you saw, Hailame's interview and you want to learn more. And that's all you got to do. We'll go ahead and get you some information absolutely for free. And you can go ahead and see if it's a good fit for you to help you build a six-figure business in under 12 months. Speaking of doing exactly that, I want to make sure that you guys are getting on Price Labs. We are partnered with Price Labs. Richie, the CEO, is a good friend of mine, and we're always releasing tips from Price Labs. Richie and I do a video every single month where we give a new tip. But what Richie is doing for everyone that signs up with our link is he's literally giving you a free 30-day trial plus a training on how to be able to get your Price Labs set up. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, all you have to do is go down to the description below and you just click on that link, and it'll set you up with that free 30-day trial plus the training. And then if you're listening on the podcast, all you have to do is just go to the show notes for this one. It's going to be fearlesskyle.com/Hailame, which is spelled basically Hail, A-M-E, Hailame. That's all it is. fearlesskyle.com/Hailame. And you can find all the show notes on that, all of the links that I just mentioned to you, all the information will be all right there, including the Price Labs link. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with Hailame. Guys, if you're just joining us, we are about to go live with Hailame Kinikini, good friend of mine, one of my students in the six-figure formula, and he has just destroyed this business in a short amount of time. Get ready to ask your questions, get them prepared. If you want to move fast like Hailame has, what's up, Tamari? Hey, thanks for jumping on, man. If you want to move fast, like almost said like Tamari has, like Hailame has, then you're definitely going to want to take some notes and ask some questions. But Hailame, man, really excited about this. You ready to drop some bombs here?
Oh, I'm excited. I appreciate you having me on. So yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah, well, honestly, and just a little bit of background for those of you as you're getting ready to jump in here, and we'll go live here in a second. Hailame has done so much, and by the way, we call him Hailame. You would rather go by Hailame, right?
Yeah, that's my preferred. Yep.
Yeah. Hailame has done so well in such a short amount of time that he's actually become one of our coaches because he's just like I said, blown up this business in under 4 months. And we're going to hear all about that here in a second, but that's how big of a deal this guy has become. So it is now 1 minute past the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started. Guys, welcome in to the live video that we're doing with Hailame Kinikini and how to be able to build a six-figure business literally in under 1 month. That's exactly what Hailame has done. If you're watching this on a recording on the Fearless Investor podcast and YouTube channel, I'm going to encourage you to really just watch this from start to end. This is going to be inspiring. This is going to, for those of you that are kind of maybe on the fence of like, do I want to jump in? Do I want to get started in Airbnb? This is going to help you to be able to make that decision today. But Hailame, man, thanks for joining us.
Hey, excited to be here. Thanks, Kyle.
Awesome. So we were talking about before we got on, you don't really have any crazy guest stories quite yet, but you have just some crazy growth. So what's the craziest or the most just eye-popping thing for you so far in your short Airbnb journey that you want to share with everyone?
Yeah. It's funny, as you mentioned, I'm now a coach, as in your course, just due to kind of my story. But, yesterday, you know that I had a little presentation, and I was when I was preparing my presentation, I was going through essentially all the messages, all of the beginning stages of my business. And the very first message that I sent out on Facebook to acquire Arbitrage and start my business was 16 weeks ago. And just last week, I just signed a contract for a hotel. It's an 11-unit building. It's actually 12 units. But we just signed it, and that would make 33 for me year to date. And it just blew my mind as I was like preparing the training. And I look back, I was like, wow, that was only 16 weeks ago. And here I am signing, an 11-unit property. So I'm stoked.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. I mean, first month, 12 units, 11K. Second month, I think you were close to netting over 10K, if I'm not mistaken. And now you're at, like you said, just signing your 33rd unit. Guys, just for perspective, like people are pretty amazed with how fast I moved. It took me to get 33 units. It took me about, I want to say 19, 20 months. Hailame just did it in under 4 months, which is just wild, absolutely wild. So, again, I think there's going to be some great questions for you today, especially you are very close to a lot of people that are going to be jumping in here that are just getting started or wanting to get started, a lot closer than where I'm at, which is 3 years into the business. And so I think you're going to just provide so much value today, but let's turn the clock back a little bit. Let's go back to, before Airbnb, and you actually have a few other things that you still do. Just tell me what, business was like. What were you doing for work? What was life like? Just rewind that clock and help catch us up.
Yeah, for sure. So my background and my history has been in sales. I've been in sales for almost a decade now. I got my start in actually door-to-door sales. And I actually owe a lot to that because it prepared me a lot, I feel like, for getting to this point. But it was in 2019 was when I started to mingle in Airbnb. And I started to do it with my own properties. At one point, I was managing, 6 different properties. And it's funny, I actually quit. I quit on Airbnb. And a lot of that came from, I felt like I was in it quite a bit. I consider myself an entrepreneur. Obviously my background is in sales, and I've had a lot of jobs in that capacity, but I'm always trying to figure out different ways to make money. And Airbnb was one of them. And, I had a stint where I did it for, a year or so. And I ended up, it's funny because we had connected, I think back in 2020 when I was.
Oh, yeah. You were just getting started.
Yeah. I was just
You thought I was a joke.
No, I didn't think you were a joke.
I'm messing.
This is a plug, right? I think a lot of times we think we can do it ourselves, and we think we can figure it out. But you and your course and just the mentorship, and I think anybody can take this and apply it to their lives. But really, like, there is a ton of value in learning from people's mistakes. And learning from people's mistakes and being able to apply it in your business. And that's ultimately what I did with Kyle. I mean, me and Kyle reconnected back in January. And that's when I kind of just made a conscious decision. I was like, look, I'm going to dive all in on this. And I have, and here we are, 33 units later. So it's been fun.
All right. So I think the first thing I want to really understand is you were owning these 6 units, right?
Mhm.
And I think one of the other things that you told me was it sounded like they weren't super profitable, if I remember. And it sounds like you were doing a lot of the hands-on work yourself. So looking back at that, like just help me understand where you were at and what you thought about Airbnb and short-term rentals at that time, as you were in it, as you were very active, and as you were seeing not such a great return. Take us back to there. And then what was just maybe that like mindset shift that helped you understand maybe what you were either doing wrong, or the deals weren't right, or what was it exactly that helped you with that transition? So I hope
Yeah.
that question makes sense.
Yeah, no, perfect. And so when I had started in Airbnb, and it's funny because now I'm sitting at a different spot on the table, right? Originally, when I looked into Airbnb and when I had met you, Kyle, for the first time, this is back in 2020. Um, I just thought, I'm going to throw it up there and we're going to run it. And how hard could it really be? And it's like I heard this analogy that Airbnb is similar to skiing, right? Like you could know literally nothing and you can still make it down the hill,
Yeah.
right? But but like depending on your skill level, your experience, systems, how that ride is from the top of the hill to the bottom is going to look very different, right?
Mm.
And so for me, I thought that I could do it, and I was getting at the bottom of the hill, right? I posted my listing, and my first one was in Texas, and it was, I was getting good money. And then really the next phase after you post and start getting bookings is really managing systems and managing the property and managing people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the part that I really suffered. That was the part that, and I didn't really, you don't know what you don't know until you develop some of these systems and you learn some of these skills. But I was in it. I mean, I was helping other friends manage their properties. We were, trying to create systems by outsourcing different cleaners, by, we were just basically calling handymen on the spot when we needed them. And really, when you started to run the numbers and see all of these things, we weren't making as much money as we could have been. There was a lot of money left on the table that, wasn't being captured because of our lack of systems or lack of knowledge, right? And that's where, for me, I just kind of checked out. I was just like, you know what? I gave it a good try. Like it's Airbnb, it's just not for me, right? It wasn't until really earlier this year when me and you reconnected, Kyle, and we were at a mastermind, and you were speaking at that mastermind. Yeah. And you were up at that mastermind, and you basically were telling your story. And I remember you said basically something to the effect of, "Hey, I got 60 plus properties at this point, and I'm working maybe 2-3 hours a week." And in that moment, I realized my pride, and I was like, I was doing it completely wrong. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, there's obviously something here that I don't know about, and something that I need to like figure out, right? And that was like a turning point for me. I think at that point it was like, okay, I think I should probably look into this. I think I should figure out what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's doing it this way, like obviously there's something I can learn, right? And that was kind of the spark of like, okay, I'm jumping in this.
Yeah. So guys, just a reminder, if you're watching this live, please post your questions right now. Like the first thing that comes to mind for me in a question is, well, what was one or two of those things that you were maybe in and doing, and then you realize, wow, I don't have to be in that. I can actually use a technology or hire a person and they can do it. Just give me a few examples, or maybe even just one major example that helped you to be able to remove yourself from the day-to-day.
So one of them is really third-party softwares. I didn't know that existed. Price Labs, I think, is a big one. You have said multiple times in multiple videos on your platform, if you're not using Price Labs, you're leaving money on the table. And that's just the start, right? We have Turnover B&B, there's Hostaway, there's Hospitable. There's all these softwares that really, for me, helped kind of take a lot of, really regaining a lot of my time back. So
that's awesome. All right. So mainly it was the technologies for you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Technologies.
Awesome. Cool. We have a good question from someone. Meng just asked how do you convince landlords being a newbie? And I think it's a great question because you are one of the best. Now, again, Lame comes with a lot of sales experience, but what I love about your approach is that you're not very salesy. You're real, you're a family man, you are really just showing people options, which at the end of the day, I think is really good sales. But if you were to answer that question, especially being someone who's now added 33 units in your first 16 weeks of jumping back into this business, breaking it down just maybe to a couple key tips there.
Yeah. So when I first started to approach landlords, really my mindset was just trying to be somebody that they wanted to work with. And a lot of that, like there were some key things that I started to see, key pieces of information that I would share about myself that made landlords a lot more appealing to work with me. One of that was like just mentioning that I am, I'm local. I'm a small local family-owned business where we focus on arbitrage. And that's how I would introduce myself, is I would tell them that, hey, I'm a small local family business, right? And I think for any of us who are entrepreneurs or are in business, people love that. People love supporting the small local guys, right? And so right away, that was a huge trust builder in starting off the conversation. And then the second thing was preparation. I think it was huge for me in terms of, before, I actually started to approach landlords and homeowners before I created an LLC or before I created a logo and a brand and had a name for my company. But it wasn't really what like cemented my success and was a huge catalyst was the moment I created those materials. The moment I created an actual brand name, a company name, an LLC, and then approaching, homeowners with that prepared, showing them, hey, this is my business. I'm small, I'm local. It's just a family-owned business here where you live. You'll be able to communicate with me. And that right there, I think took off a lot for me. Like that helped a ton for me and really helped me take off. So
yeah, I think too, it's a mindset thing, right? Like it takes the onus off of you having to feel like I got to convince this person to now, hey, here's all my professional materials that speak for me. And you're either going to love me or you're not going to love me. One of the things I love about what you do is just what you mentioned with the local side of things and being a family man. You even talked about it last night in one of our trainings, is just looking the part and looking relatable and being yourself. And also like, not having the unprofessional photos on your LinkedIn or your Facebook page. I think the first thing, especially with the way that you're doing it, in fact, you want to go into that just a little bit, how you're doing it, how you're getting these leads in Plentiful. It's a lot of them, right? And if I'm not mistaken, have been cold. Is that right?
Yeah. 90% of them have been cold. And, and after, really that's how I started, was just straight cold. And it wasn't until I had a foundation that I started getting kind of more leads. But kind of to answer your point, yeah, I've always been of the mindset that if your employer were to look and Google your name, right? What would they find? What would they find on your social media? What would they find on your LinkedIn? And I've always taken that to heart. And so, when I'm reaching out to some of these homeowners on Facebook, which has been where I've sourced the majority of my leads and built the majority of my profile, is just on Facebook Messenger. Is I'll get on there, I'll be like, hey, I'm super interested in this property. Can we hop on a call? And as a homeowner, my thought process, because when I had my property in Texas, I remember listing it, and I was looking. This is before I tried to Airbnb it. I was trying to find a renter, and I remember putting it on Facebook, and immediately I just got spammed with tons of messages, right? And it's funny because I remember really, being honest, I was just judging a book by its cover.
Yeah.
When somebody would send me a message, I just take a real quick glance at what's their profile pic. Does it look real? And then if it didn't, I'd move on. Right. And to be honest, there was a lot of those. There was a lot of people that were reaching out to me that they had a cartoon, or it was a picture of a flag or something. And I didn't know who I was communicating to as a landlord. And so naturally, like I had no incentive and I could care less about responding to that message. Right. And so I think one little thing that's helped me a ton is like just having, like on my profile picture, you'll see that I have a professional picture of me and my family. We take them every year. On my LinkedIn, you see, now I actually have my logo up there. So if anybody Googles my name on LinkedIn, they're going to see that, okay, here's your company logo. You are the CEO of that company, right? And so I think you set yourself apart and you really give yourself a chance with landlords when you're cold contacting them, when you can just have a presentable profile and have kind of those materials ready and prepared. So,
That's awesome. All right. So I want to transition a little bit. You got, am I right that you're at about 10 active? So you have about 23 that are still waiting to get put on Airbnb?
Yeah, we're a bit more than that. We're about 14 active.
Okay.
15 active. Yeah.
Awesome. So you look back 2019, you're in it, you're very active, you're, 6 units and you feel like your wheels are spinning. Now you're at 14 units with a new mindset, a new business model. Yep. How many hours are you putting into your business currently, and where are those hours being allocated? What is really what I'm getting at is what is the difference in what you were doing back in 2019 versus the time that you're doing today?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to plug you, Kyle. You in your course and really the systems that I was able to learn and utilize early on have helped with the growth tremendously. I'm working a fraction of the time that I did work when I had half the units that I have now, a quarter of the units, right? And a lot of that is because of those systems. To give you a hard number, I mean, to be honest, like I can't remember the last time that I actually like spoke directly to one of my guests. I have a lot of guest communication automated. I now have a VA, an assistant that helps me with that. And so really, I mean, I couldn't even tell you, it's probably 3-4 hours a week and maybe, right? I will say at this point, a lot of my time is focused on growth.
Yeah.
Now that I have a lot of these contracts, CoHost, Arbitrage, I'm trying to figure out creative ways to now buy properties. So that's where a lot of the time is going. But because of the systems that I was to place early on, it's really made the growth really easy. And I feel like my capacity is a lot higher than it is, which is crazy because I'm growing really fast, but my systems are there. So it doesn't feel overwhelming, doesn't feel overbearing.
Yeah, and this is something I think it's important for us to stick on just for a second, because what you're talking about, the 2019 version of Hailame is where most people are at in Airbnb. They are focused on the $20 per hour tasks, cleaning, inventory, profit and loss statements for whether it's themselves or other owners, setting up the properties, painting, repairs, all those things that we feel like are really productive, but we can outsource that for $20, $30, $40 an hour. What you are now doing, based on, and this is just numbers, right? If we're making $10,000 per month net and we're putting in 3 hours per week, do the math there. You're essentially only putting in about 12 hours to make about $10,000. You just went from $20 per hour and spinning your head or spinning your plates and putting in 40-hour work weeks now to essentially $1,000 that you just have. What is that, 50x, or no, that's 500x? Am I right? What am I looking at here? Yeah, you've basically you've 50x'd your income by becoming a CEO of your business rather than the technician of your business. And I love that you said that. So do you feel like the majority of that was easy for you to do, or was that tough for you to get into that mindset?
So, yeah, I really think mindset is so important in this game. And I've been a part of a lot of sales organizations that have allowed me to develop different mindsets. And I can honestly say that like, I am thankful that I actually failed and quit before I came to you. because it put me in the right mindset. And that mindset really essentially is like, you don't know it all. There's a lot that you can learn. And really, and this is where the sales came inside. I really told myself, like, hey, if Kyle can do this and all these people in this course, that are real people that are like myself, if they can do it, why can't I? Right. And it's crazy because literally 5 months ago, guys, I was watching these videos and I was like, this is insane. And hearing some of these stories, and I'm like, these people can do this. Like, what am I missing? And really, it just took a little bit of a shift in terms of telling myself, like, hey, I have all the tools I need to be successful. I have this network of people that I can learn from their mistakes. All I got to do is just go work. And that helped a ton. And guys, I really don't consider myself anybody special. Like, I don't think that I'm like crazy good at this or that, even in sales. I've been in sales for a long time, but I don't consider myself like a killer dog when it comes to sales. But I think more than anything, I just saw this opportunity. I saw this network of people that I could learn from. And then I just committed. And I was like, full send. I'm just doing it. And
that's awesome.
here we are.
So good. Got a lot of good questions coming in. We're going to ask some of them here in a second. Guys, if you're watching or listening live, make sure to comment with your questions here in the Facebook group, and we will get to them here in about 5 to 10 minutes or so with Lame. But one thing that I need to ask you is, I heard you say you have a VA who's doing a little bit of work for you. Who else have you added to your team to give you that confidence to say, hey, we can blow this thing up. We can move this thing to the moon from here?
Yeah. So there's so as of now, I have 3 really core people that have helped with my business. The first is her name is Vienna. This has been through trial and error. She's a designer, up and coming. It's funny, guys, because she's literally a sophomore in high school. She's a sophomore in high school. I went through 2 other people that I had to eventually let go, but she essentially handles all of my startup. So she'll see a property, she'll go buy all the furniture, get it set up. She usually can get me a property up and running within 2 weeks. She's been huge, especially in winning time back. She has been phenomenal. The second has been my assistant, who manages a VA, and she's actually my sister. And she is the one who handles a lot of the operations. So guest communication, managing those systems, as well as managing my VA, and just making sure that we're communicating, that the cleaners are on time. That's she kind of plays 2 roles there. I think eventually I'll probably hire somebody separate than her to manage the cleanings, but right now she's doing all of it. So cool. She's managing the cleanings as well as operations. Then the third, and he's become one of my best friends, and I've brought him on at a certain part to scale. And his name is Josh Fafita, and he's one of my good friends, and he's helped a ton in terms of me scaling. I think to grow as fast as I have, I've had to find different ways to bring money to create, these Airbnbs, right? I'm not a millionaire, right? And so your money will only go so far. And so I knew I needed somebody to come on that could help me find money to where now I'm at a point in my business where I'm actually creating multiple Airbnbs without using any of my own money.
That's amazing.
Right. And I'm just leveraging what I've learned in Airbnb as a property manager. And so those are kind of the 3 core people that I have working with me that have helped enormously in terms of managing this business and helping scale.
And a decent amount of cleaners, I'd assume, too.
Yep. And so we have about, we probably have, interesting enough, we probably have more than we need. I have about 5 that are my core, and then I have a handful of others that come in at different times. But, I imagine we'll need them as we start scaling and start opening up a lot of these ones. So
very nice. So you have this guy, Josh, he's literally just dedicated to going and finding money. Is that right?
Yep.
How are you structuring that in your business? Is he getting part of the deals?
And this is going to be me being a bit vulnerable. Like, those are still things we're still working out, right?
Yeah.
And we're figuring out. And what I've learned in this business, guys, is like, you just have to be ready to adapt, adjust, and to roll. And I still don't know what, some of these things look like, but I I just know that if you're working with the right people, you can sell them the dream in terms of like, hey, you may feel underpaid right now, but I promise you this is going to come back in some way or another. Then you can find the right people to build your business with. So with Josh specifically, I think it's probably going to be equity at some point because he's playing a very significant role in this. As far as the other two, those are kind of, I'm still figuring those out right now. It's kind of an hourly wage basis. So
yeah, I think exactly what you just said there is really relatable. You don't have to have everything figured out, right? You don't have to have the perfect pitch for landlords. You don't have to have the perfect market. You don't have to have the perfect property. You don't have to have the perfect team. You don't have to have the perfect payroll structure. None of that. You just figure it out along the way. You go out and you make mistakes, you do it. And it's funny, you in your training last night, right? Like you had that realization of like, oh, I thought I was closing like 1 out of every 2 landlords, but it turned out that I was just been getting after it and just forgetting about all my no's and having a short-term memory on those no's, because it actually turned out that you were getting like 1 out of every 10 instead of 1 out of every 2, which sounds a little bit more realistic. I love that. And I think honestly, well, before I share my side of this, what do you think? Do you attribute that to a majority of your success, or is there a certain mindset, certain trait that you think you have or have developed in order to be able to move so quickly?
Yeah, really good question. For me, I feel like a mindset that I've carried with me is, and this can relate to anything. If somebody can do it, why couldn't you? Mm-hmm. And even if you weren't as talented, even if I wasn't as good looking, talented, capable, whatever it may be, I just know that if I can just keep doing it, like I'm bound to be successful. And I think that led a lot to like my success in terms of this, like to where I really, it's funny because I did tell you that. I was like, Kyle, I think I'm closing like 1 of every 2 people. I'm on fire. Like I'm on fire. And then when I started preparing, I saw that it was like 1 of 20, but something in my head was telling me, hey, I'm winning. And I just kept going. And, I think what it was is I just wasn't stopping until I won, and that's all that mattered to me. And so that I think has been the mindset for me. It's like, man, I could be the worst salesman in the world, but if I just talk to enough people, I'm bound to find somebody,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a numbers game, right? That's all it is. I mean, and I just gave some advice to someone the other day that just joined our course, and he said, hey, I don't have my logo. I don't have my marketing materials. I haven't done any market analysis. Like, I just need to get all that done first. And I told him, no, you just need to go talk to landlords, like, and just practice, like go. In fact, I even told him, I was like, go find properties that you don't want. And just go practice on those landlords. And that way, the worst thing that could happen is they say yes. And you say, on second thought, I think I'm actually going to go a different direction.
Yeah.
Right. And that just gets you into practice. There's no such thing as like getting just enough information to be able to finally have that perfect pitch. It's just about, what's the term? Perfect practice makes perfection, or something like that. Or practice makes perfect. It's none of that is actually going to get you to perfect, but it's going to get you closer to it. But I can tell you right now, studying and watching even my course, just rewatching my course is not going to get you results. It's going to be getting out there and grinding on the pavement. So we talked a lot about that. Last question, I'm going to open up to everyone else. Guys, we talked about our course. What is it? It's the short-term rental 6-figure formula. It's a year-long program, and Lame is a part of that. Lame, if someone is out there right now and they're getting ready to get started, take them back to February when you were deciding to get started. What was it that made you say, hey, I need the help? And what has been part of that has helped you to be able to move as quickly as you have?
Yeah. When I look back at when I started Airbnb to where I'm at now, especially in terms of the last few months, I think a big thing was just mindset. And I know I feel like I'm beating the same drum, but like that to me was significant in embracing all of the knowledge that was there and ready for me. I don't think if I had taken this course when we first met in 2020, Kyle, I don't think I would have found the same success I have now.
Mm.
And so I think a lot of you are there thinking about this, you're studying, right? And ultimately, until you can make the decision and tell yourself that, hey, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to keep losing until I learn and then win, until you can commit to that path, like it's really, you can't really do anything else for yourself, right? And so and once I made that decision, again, this is another plug. Kyle has every resource and every tool available in his course for you to do exactly what I'm doing now. The only person that's keeping anybody from finding that success is yourself. I really believe that, right?
That's awesome.
And so that would be my response to that question.
Cool. That's awesome, man. If you're watching live right now and you want more information on the six-figure formula, all you have to do is comment on the Facebook post here of this video, just 6FF, just like my hat says. And then if you are listening to the recording and you are ready to learn more as well, easy enough. Just email me, info@fearlesskyle.com, and just make sure the subject says 6FF. Let's go ahead and open up to questions with everyone now. And we've got a few really good ones. Don't get your feelings hurt, guys, if we don't ask your question. There's a lot of good ones and we're limited on time here. So what I'm going to start off with, there was a couple questions about the types of contracts that are being signed, and are you using a full-on lease? Are you doing an addendum? Especially with arbitrage, the landlord says yes, then boom, what are you getting signed, Hailame?
So I am, it's been a process of, learning through my mistakes. Originally I was just signing a lease, but now I am signing an addendum with the lease. I found the easiest way is actually just figuring out like what parts that you need to have in a lease, and then just communicating that with the landlord. I think the legalities and all of that is surprisingly an opportunity to actually close landlords. Like if you can actually go back to them and not just be a yes man and be like, hey, I really want to work with you, Kyle. Here's a few of my major concerns just based on this lease. What do we got to do to make this work?
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm just having a hard conversation with them about tweaking things, having things in there that I want. And again, those are things that I've had to learn the hard way in figuring out through trial and error. So to answer your question, it's been a progressive like trial and error thing given my market, but now I'm at the point where I'm signing a lease with an addendum. And the addendum just basically summarizes really easily a lot of those points, but it may change, right? Again, I'm constantly learning, constantly adapting.
But. And you're signing those with your LLC, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
All those are LLC. Yep. Not my personal name. Yep.
Cool. Love it. Okay. We've got one from Douglas. That's a general question. I'm going to ask it and then I'm going to double up and give you a follow-up question. He says, what's the difference between arbitrage and co-hosting? And I want to add on, and which do you prefer and why?
Yeah. So arbitrage is essentially when you're approaching a landlord and somebody that has a property that's for rent, you basically say, hey, I want to be a tenant. And you sign the lease as if you were just a normal tenant, but in that lease, there's an addendum or language in the lease that allows you to sublease. So basically, if I'm renting this property for $2,000, I've run comps, I know that I can make $4,000 on this property, then I'm taking the profits of that, right, after my rent costs and all that. And so that's arbitrage. Co-host is essentially when you are a property manager for somebody that has an Airbnb and that is familiar with it, right? You probably could help like better. Is that a good explanation of co-host?
Yeah, essentially the owner is now taking over all financial responsibilities and you are just charging them a percentage for providing a service to make it passive for them.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now in my portfolio, I first started heavily with arbitrage. And a lot of that is because it took me a long time to feel confident to approach people about co-hosting, because that opens up risk for the homeowner. Whereas arbitrage, you're basically just guaranteeing them like, hey, I'm just going to pay rent just like normal. And then you're actually fronting the money to be able to get an Airbnb ready. So for all the furniture, all the amenities, all that's coming out of your pocket in arbitrage. So there's a big pro and con there, right? Arbitrage, it's a lot more money up front. Co-host, essentially none, right? You don't have to invest anything. That's what the homeowner's doing, is they're getting an Airbnb ready for themselves. Now the con to that is the margins. Arbitrage, I think last month I made, multiple properties. I was making $2,000 plus on the arbitrage. And so you're making huge margins on arbitrage, whereas co-host, you're not making as much. Typically, I have contracts that are anywhere between 15 and 30%. And those are just management fees, right? And the nice thing about those is that I didn't have to spend any of my money to get that residual, right? That was just money that's coming straight in my pocket. I didn't have to spend anywhere. Arbitrage, I'm kind of recouping my money, right? And if I've ran my numbers correctly, I'm really not being profitable until month 7, 8, 9, right? And so those are kind of the pros and cons. To me, I think both of them are great opportunities. It really just depends on where you're at.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you got to a point in your business where you had spent a bunch of money on arbitrage units and you started to have to look a little bit more at co-hosting, do the financial, upfront. Is that right?
Yep. And so now I'm bringing in multiple parties, a property owner, a partner with capital, and then I'm creating an opportunity for myself. So yeah, I've had to be creative.
Yeah. I think very simply, the way I like to talk about it is, we got a column for risk and financial, what you're financially contributing, and reward. Ownership, you're going to have the most risk, you're going to have the most financial contribution, and you're going to also probably make the most. Then arbitrage, and then co-hosting. So it just has that and for me, I know you and I have had this conversation. I'd much rather have 20% of a deal than 100% of no deal. And that's why I love co-hosting, is because I don't have to put up any money. Maybe I don't make as much money as arbitrage or owning, but it's still cash flow. And it's simple cash flow. So
absolutely
awesome. All right. We got Shane asking, what are some typical problems you're able to solve for landlords? And do you have specific scripts when talking to landlords? So, that can be a whole training in itself. But maybe you just made a top 2 or 3 problems that you're solving for landlords. What you're talking about.
That's huge. Really good question. And I learned this as I was kind of going out and through trial and error, but really there are a handful of core objections that all landlords have. And what they'll say it in different ways, but if you boil it down, it comes down to what I like to think 3 core main objections. The first one, and is typically at the top of their list, is liability, right? Like, how are they liable if there's a party? How are they liable if there's damages? That's usually typically the first objection that any landlord has. And if you can answer that, a simple answer with that is, hey, Airbnb, they have air cover, right? And I'm explaining that, I'm solving that problem. Second is money, right? They want to know what's their risk of you paying rent, right? And a lot of landlords, they love when they can sign a lease with a company, because what that means is typically there's probably books, there's probably auto pay, there's probably a system to where they're never going to be late, right? And they don't have to worry about eviction. So that's the second problem that's always a huge concern. And then the last that I've found that they always have is, who are they working with, right? They want to know how much involvement do they have? Is it something that they have to worry about? Do they have to manage the property? Who are they working with if they have the problem? And that's really to answer that, my solution to that is my relationship is my capital when it comes to the landlord, right? They have my number, they know how to contact me, they have my systems. And so really, I just ensure them hey, again, this is a small local business. You can call me. I live 20 minutes from you. If anything happens, I can come, we can talk. You'll be dealing directly with me. And awesome. So those are the 3, I'd say, core main objections. If you resolve those, you're in a good spot.
Love it. Love it, man. Okay. Last question here from Jana. She says, how do you find landlords with houses that you can pitch arbitrage to?
Yeah, really good question. So I've again, this could be a whole nother training too, but
yeah, pretty much was last night.
Last night I went through all this, but I've found the majority of my contracts all through Facebook. And I like Facebook because in my market, that seems to be the path of least resistance to actually talk directly to the landlord or the homeowner, as opposed to like a gatekeeper, like a company, a management company, or a realtor. And the way that I do that is I just go on Facebook Marketplace and I'll just search properties for rent. I'll use the filters, but I do Facebook. Rentler is another app that I use. It's just another app that like landlords can put their property up, and then Zillow. So.
Awesome. And just to a little clarifying question from Jana. She says, how do you find them on Facebook? You're talking about Facebook Marketplace.
Correct.
Yeah. So Jana, there's a lot of filters there that you can go ahead and look at on Facebook Marketplace to be able to find properties. All right, Hailame, this has been awesome. Quick question.
Yeah.
What is next for you? Like where is going to be defined success for you in business? This can be taken to the moon, it looks like, for where you're headed, but where are you headed?
Yeah, we were running our numbers just the other day. My goal is I'd like to do $1 million by the end of this year. So not in a full year, but that's going to be in about 8 months, and I think I can do it. I think I'm right on par with it, but that's ultimately the short-term goal. And then long-term goal, what I love about Airbnb, guys, is it is a door into an industry where there are unlimited ways to make money. This is just the start. I mean, Airbnb for me is just really a path to get me involved into real estate, and I'm just excited to see what comes of it. But Airbnb solves a very common question in real estate, which is, after you have a property, what's your risk? What's your liability? If you can figure out Airbnb, like, you can overpay for properties, you can overpay for investments, because the numbers and the cash flow always make sense. And so to me, it's, I don't know exactly what it is. I know that real estate as a whole, owning a lot of properties, Airbnb-ing them, that's kind of all in the picture. So that's my goal.
Awesome. And hey, really quickly, how can people get connected with you? Instagram, or where should they find you?
Yep. You can get me on Instagram. My name's just on the, it's on the advertisement. There's a good chance if you type in that name, you're probably not another person with that name.
Hailame Kinikini.
Just plug my name in. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. So give me a holler.
Perfect. You want to spell that name really quickly?
Hailame, Hailame. Then my last name is Kinikini, Kinikini. You type those two names in, I'll pop up.
There you go, brother. You are an inspiration. It's just been so much fun seeing your growth in such a short amount of time. Very proud of you, man.
Hey, Kyle, appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Once again, the show notes for this one, fearlesskyle.com/Hailame, Hailame. And if you're ready to get started in Airbnb, I hope this was an inspiration for you. If you're ready to get the help that you need, or you want to at least explore that route with our 6-figure formula, please go ahead and email me, info@fearlesskyle.com. Make sure the subject says 6FF, and then just go ahead and let us know that you want more information. We will send that to you in some next steps so that you can get some free information on how you can get started with our coaching program with the 6-figure formula. That's it for now. Thank you for joining us here on the Fearless Investor channel, where we're helping you to conquer the world of Airbnb.